Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be checking out one of the new Shadow Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Shadow Xatu. Xatu is a Psychic and Flying type Pokemon with the moveset of Air Slash, Aerial Ace, and your choice of Ominous Wind or Future Sight. Now, regular Xatu is already pretty glassy, so the Shadow variant is going to be absurdly frail. I tried it out in the Catch Cup and paired it up with a Shadow Steelix and a Guzzlord Closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Shadow Xatu in action in the Catch Cup. Dream lead in the first match, Shadow Xatu into Shadow Venusaur. Opponent is going to save switch into Greedent. I'm going to bank a bunch of energy and then bring in Shadow Steelix. I'm not too concerned about switch advantage in this matchup because both Shadow Xatu and Guzzlord have very nice matchups against Venusaur. Greedent is able to get an early Crunch debuff. They're going for Crunch number 2 and they get debuff number 2 as well. You hate to see it. I'll go for the Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs is not going to do a lot of damage, but will debuff them in return. I'm not going to commit a shield to the Steelix here. As I mentioned, switch advantage isn't really important to me in this matchup as much as getting an energy lead. So I'm going to send in Guzzlord. Guzzlord gets a nice farm down. I'm not expecting them to send in the Venusaur. Instead, we see their final Pokemon, which is Shadow Steelix, and that is really bad for me. I'll fire off the Crunch. Crunch will do a solid amount of damage. Steelix is going to farm up. This is not nearly enough for an Earthquake, so I am going to let that through. It is going to be just the Psychic Fangs, and now I can send in Xatu. Xatu going for the Ominous Wind, hoping for the shield and for the boost. I do get the shield, but no boost from Xatu. That's not great. This could be a Crunch, so I will respect it with a shield, and it is the Crunch. I have to watch for the catch here. I farm up, opponent goes for the catch, and they send in Venusaur. Shadow Xatu going for the Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace one-shots the Venusaur. What is that damage? Now it's all up to Guzzlord. Can Guzzlord Dragon Tail down a Steel type? This is going to be close. Steelix lowers my defense. Guzzlord gets the farm down, and that is a good game. Picking up a tough lead in the next match, Shadow Xatu into Toxapex. Immediate save switch into my Shadow Steelix, and my opponent is going to simultaneously swap into their Sableye. They're running the shiny Purified Sableye, which is an incredibly cool flex. I'm going to farm up and bait with a Psychic Fangs, hoping to try and grab a shield. Psychic Fangs does grab a shield from my opponent. That is incredible. Steelix will be able to tank this foul play, so I'm actually going to let this go. Steelix absorbs that damage, no problem. Shadow Steelix is extremely tanky, and now I'm going for the kill shot with the Crunch. Crunch is able to KO the Sableye, and I win switch. Back in comes Toxapex. Toxapex is going to have a miserable time trying to farm down Steelix. I land the Psychic Fangs. That does a solid chunk of damage. Steelix farming up. My opponent does not want to get hit with another move, and they're going to fire off the Brine. Brine is going to KO. I'm going to send in Guzzlord. In the back, the opponent has their own Guzzlord. We have the Battle of Ultra Beasts. This Dragon Claw will do a massive amount of damage. My opponent is going to commit their final shield. And you know what? I'm going to trust in Shadow Xatu. Always a risky decision because of how glassy it is. In comes Shadow Xatu. These Air Slashes are not doing a lot, but these Dragon Tails are tearing through Xatu. Crunch does get shielded. Xatu going for the farm down, and I get it. Am I going to be able to reach the double Aerial Ace before they get to a Brine? This will be close. Aerial Ace number 1, able to land. Toxapex farming up. It's a CMP tie. Xatu with the big attack stat wins CMP, takes out the Toxapex, and secures the win. Nightmare lead in the next match, Shadow Xatu into Cofagrigus. I will immediately save switch into my Shadow Steelix, and the Cofagrigus is staying in this matchup. That works out quite nicely for me. They're going to overfarm and go for a charge move. A Shadow Ball would hurt, so I will respect it with a shield. I'm going to farm up and go for the Crunch. I'm hoping they decide to call a Psychic Fangs bait here. Crunch does get shielded by my opponent, but I do get the defense drop anyway. You love to see it. I will decide to double shield in this matchup because I want to try and make a play for switch. I'm going to farm up and go for the Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs will, of course, get that ever-important defense drop, and it gets the final shield as well. I'm going to farm up, switch, and catch the Shadow Ball onto my Guzzlord. Let's go. Guzzlord tanking that like a champion, and my opponent is going to send in Noctowl. I'm going to farm up and go for the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw will do some nice chip damage, as Guzzlord does hit fairly hard. Noctowl is going to continue to farm. Noctowl fires off the charge move just before I reach the Dragon Claw. Is this going to be enough to KO? It barely is not. Guzzlord hanging on, and able to reach one final Dragon Claw. That is going to get the Noctowl very low. Noctowl's very close to a charge move, and I don't really want to take that damage anywhere, so I'm going to send in the Steelix and fire off the Psychic Fangs right away. Psychic Fangs is going to KO. We'll have to see what my opponent does have in the back. Hopefully, it's something that the Shadow Steelix Xatu combination can take out. And they have a rollout Miltank, and honestly, this is not good if they have Ice Beam. If they have Ice Beam, this Miltank is going to sweep me in the end game. I'm going to farm up and send in Xatu. We'll have to see. Do they have Ice Beam? Yes, they do. Ice Beam nearly taken out Xatu, and they will be able to reach Ice Beam number 2. Miltank, definitely not what I was expecting in the back, but well played to my opponent. Hopping into the next match, picking up a tough lead, Shadow Xatu into Shadow Swampert. Xatu is so glassy that a Hydro Cannon basically one-shots it from full health, so I will need to shield up this Hydro Cannon. Opponent is going to save switch into Toxapex, and I respond with my Shadow Steelix. Shadow Steelix does very well in this matchup because 2 brines are not enough to KO, and there's no shot of them ever farming down Steelix. Steelix is going to farm up and go for the first Psychic Fangs. This isn't going to do a ton of damage, but will begin to lower their defense more and more and more. They're going to fire off Brine number 2. This will get the Steelix low, but definitely not in a range where they can farm down. Steelix is going to farm up again to the back-to-back Psychic Fangs. This will be lethal, and now Steelix gets to leave with energy. Opponent is going to send in the Swampert. I will fire off the Psychic Fangs, hoping for a shield. My opponent lets it through. I aggressive switch into Guzzlord in the back. They have Skarmory. Honestly, Guzzlord doesn't have a terrible matchup here because Crunch will hit decently hard. Crunch gets the shield, and I get the ever-important defense drop. Let's go, Guzzlord. I'm going to let this through. Skarmory is going to fire off the Sky Attack. That does some solid damage, but Guzzlord able to hang on and reach Crunch number 2. Plus, they are now debuffed. This Crunch gets the second shield and gets yet another debuff. Let's go, Guzzlord. I reach a final Dragon Claw, and this will put it into Ominous Wind range. This Skarmory leaves with a ton of energy, but they don't get to use any of it because Xatu wins CMP with the Ominous Wind. Ominous Wind is going to take out Skarmory. In comes Swampert. I switch into Steelix and Dragon Tail down. Now you may be wondering, Henry, what's the plan if you see a G-Fisk? Well, allow me to demonstrate. You throw 1 Air Slash and you top left. Moving into the next match, picking up an incredibly good lead, Shadow Xatu into Meganium. Opponent will immediately save switch into Cofagrigus, and I have an incredibly good response available in Guzzlord. Guzzlord just absolutely crushes Cofagrigus in this matchup. Guzzlord shakes off the Dark Pulse like it's nothing, overfarms quite a bit, and is going to go for the kill shot with the Crunch. Opponent probably just going to let this through. There is no shot Cofagrigus is flipping this matchup. So down goes Cofagrigus. Opponent is going to send back in Meganium. Meganium has a lot of work to do though, because Guzzlord is still honestly pretty healthy. Guzzlord able to land a Dragon Claw. I'm going to continue to farm up, trying to force them to throw. They are going to fire off a last second charge move, perfectly fine by me. They go for the Frenzy Plant. Frenzy Plant, barely not enough to KO. I go for the last second Dragon Claw, but my opponent makes a nice switch and catches it onto the Alolan Ninetales. But now Alolan Ninetales has to suffer the wrath of Shadow Steelix. Steelix may be throwing double resisted Dragon Tails, but these Psychic Fangs are really going to add up. Ninetales continues to farm. Psychic Fangs number 2 on its way. Ninetales commits the shield and continues to farm. Steelix able to reach a third Psychic Fangs. Ninetales force the shield this if they want to keep their energy. Ninetales recognizes they're not going to charm down. They're forced to fire off their charge moves. And I'm just going to let this go and trust in Shadow Xatu to win this match. Xatu looking for the farm down. I will have to shield once, but then this Air Slash is going to be enough to KO. Down goes the Ninetales. Back in comes Meganium into the loaded Xatu. Aerial Ace taking care of the Meganium, and that is a good game. Tough lead in the next match, Shadow Xatu into Greedent. This Greedent is actually running Tackle as well. I'm going to farm up some energy and save switch into Steelix, and the Greedent is going to stay in here and go for a charge move. Perfectly fine by me. That's kind of what Steelix is here for on this team, basically just to be a damage sponge. Steelix is going to continue to farm. Greedent will go for another Crunch. This Crunch is not going to KO, but it will get me very low. I'm going to go for the Crunch myself, because this will get it into a range where I can farm down. Crunch gets them low. They're going to save their charge move and bring in Cofagrigus. Here, I should have gone for the crunch, but I go for the Psychic Fangs, and my opponent calls it. So that is a massive mistake. Had I landed the crunch, Guzzlord could farm down, but unfortunately, I'm going to be forced to throw a charge move now. They go for the Shadow Ball. That's still not going to be doing a lot, but definitely a missed opportunity in this match. I will go for the Dragon Claw. This Dragon Claw will be enough to KO the Cofagrigus since they are debuffed. In the back, my opponent has Toxapex. Toxapex is the absolute bane of my existence in this cup, as it's just so tanky. I should be able to reach a second Dragon Claw here. Going for it, but my opponent makes an incredible catch onto their Greedent, and because of that catch, looks like they're probably going to be able to win this now. They just have so much energy loaded on their Toxapex, and my Xatu is getting absolutely shredded by poison jabs. Xatu continues to farm. They're at brine number 2. I'm forced to burn my final shield. I will be able to get both shields back here, but unfortunately, this is just looking like it's game over. I go for the Aerial Ace. They commit the shield. Honestly, I should have tried to go for the Ominous Wind there, but I don't even think a boost would save me in this moment. Toxapex is going to get the farm down. Guzzlord is nowhere near a charge move. They can fire off the brine. It's resisted. It's still not enough to KO, but one poison jab will take me out, and that's game over. Tough lead in the next match, Shadow Xatu into another Toxapex. Same game plan as before, I'm going to be save switching into the Shadow Steelix, and my opponent responds with a Shadow Snorlax. This is definitely a matchup that I can flip with my Steelix. I'm going for the Psychic Fangs right away, and as you can see, after just one defense drop, these Dragon Tails are absolutely shredding the Snorlax. I will respect the superpower. I do get baited with a Body Slam, which is a little unfortunate, and I'm going to go for the Crunch to guarantee the KO if they let it through. Crunch does get the shield. They're going to try and reach a last second superpower, but I'm perfectly fine with shielding if that means I can take switch. Because, importantly enough, I am still not in brine range. So if they bring back in the Toxapex, this Toxapex is about to have an absolutely awful day. First Psychic Fangs is able to land. Toxapex will reach the brine, but brine is not going to KO here. My Steelix is absolutely chilling. We're going to tank that, no problem. My opponent switches in Greedent. That is unfortunate. Greedent is going to be able to catch the Psychic Fangs. I'm going to send in Xatu. Xatu trying to outpace the Greedent, but I'm not quite able to do so. This Crunch will absolutely one-shot Xatu. Xatu just has absolutely no bulk to it whatsoever. I'm going to send in Guzzlord and try and commit to the farm down here. Guzzlord should be able to tank one move, farm all the way down, and leave with some nice energy to take out the Toxapex. The only scary thing is that Toxapex may be able to reach a move, and I definitely need to reach 3 Dragon Claws. Back in comes the Toxapex. I'm going for Dragon Claw number 1. Dragon Claw does get the shield. I throw one more Dragon Tail, and I'm going for Dragon Claw number 2. They are very close to a move, so I'm going to wait 2 turns, switch, and catch onto the 1 HP Steelix. Let's go. And with that catch, that will be game over. Guzzlord reaches the 3rd Dragon Claw. This will be taking care of the Toxapex, and that is a good game. Hopping into the final match, picking up a terrible lead, Shadow Xatu into Sableye. I save switch into Shadow Steelix. Sableye is going to stay in and go for the foul play right away. If they're staying in, they must not have a good response, so I'm going to commit a shield and continue to farm. My opponent is going to send in Toxapex into a loaded Shadow Steelix, and that is not going to go well for them, as before they can even throw a couple poison jabs, I've already fired off these back-to-back Psychic Fangs, and they are below half health. These Dragon Tails now doing meaningful damage, as they're going to return fire with a Brine. Brine definitely not going to KO, so I'm going to let that through, and I should be able to overfarm in this matchup. I'm going to overfarm quite a bit, switch in Xatu, and get the aggressive snipe. Now I've saved a bunch of energy on my Steelix. Back in comes Sableye. Sableye will be able to outpace and reach a charge move. Tough decision to make. I am actually going to shield the Xatu, go for the Ominous Wind. I haven't managed to get a boost yet. I'm hoping this will be the opportunity. Ominous Wind gets the shield, but I do not get the boost, and I barely get farmed down. They should only leave with a foul play, so I'm going to send in Guzzlord to tank that damage, as Guzzlord is going to resist it. In the back, they have Shadow Skuntank, and this game should be over. I'll fire off the Dragon Claw, and I have so much loaded energy on the Steelix. Dragon Claw gets the shield, aggressive switch into the Steelix, and let's begin the debuff spam. First Psychic Fangs lands. It is, of course, resisted, but they have no way of resetting their defense drop. Psychic Fangs number 2 gets them low. They're forced to fire off a last-second charge move. This will KO the Steelix, but they do not have the back-to-back moves, meaning Guzzlord will be able to farm down and get the win. While I did have fun using Shadow Xatu, this is absolutely not a Pokemon I would recommend investing your resources in. Xatu's typing already isn't the best, it's weak to a lot of common meta stuff, and on top of that, it is so glassy to the point where it's basically unusable. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our channel members. The support you guys provide is extremely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.